We have to come together, but to come together, there's only one thing that's going to do it, and that's massive success. Success will bring the country together, but it's hard.
President Trump yesterday talking to Brett Baer, and, success. Remember when success was an American norm? Before the left sunk their teeth into the country and started sucking all the blood out, like the vampires they are. And we have our new friend Mark on the line, calling from Ontario, Canada. And Mark, I appreciate your calling in and hanging in there. I'm thankful.
I'm hanging in.
Very good. And I'll tell you what, I'm not sure if you've been following closely along, but you know that your prime minister, your Canadian prime minister, Justin Blackface Trudeau, he was caught on tape. This undoubtedly has made a lot of news in Canada as well. And you can barely hear him, but I want to play it for you anyway, because here's the Blackface Trudeau saying, "Oh yeah, Trump is serious about making Canada a state."
Mr. Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country, and it is a real thing.
And then I don't know if you heard this. It's less likely, Mark, that you heard President Trump yesterday talking to Brett Baer, and Brett Baer said, Justin Trudeau. He said to President Trump, he said, Justin Trudeau said you're serious about Canada becoming the 51st state, and it went like this.
The Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was at a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it.
Yeah, dang Canadians. Yep. What's with
my
that,
perspective?
Mark? Yeah, please.
Well,
yeah.
So I'm in Toronto, Canadian, born in Toronto, and there's 40 million of us now up here north of the border, and we have depended on the United States of America to protect us. Canadians don't want to admit it. That's the problem. We're proud of our soldiers and our past,
sure,
and the allies. We had an Air Force before the United States had an Air Force. There's lots of history, but forget that. This is 100 years later, almost. I'm one of the very few people in my group of friends, family that will actually, dare to say, we should be, we could be, and it wouldn't really be a problem.
A state. You should become a state, you're saying.
Well, maybe Ontario should become a state and others could opt out. We've always had a problem here where Quebec has been a separatist province.
Right.
So maybe they'd like to opt out. But maybe there's other provinces like Ontario and Alberta that would opt in.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that Mr. Trump is thinking out of the box.
Right.
And everybody, I'm surrounded by people that think I'm just totally nuts. And you know what? They're Democrats. And even though we're in the midst of throwing Trudeau out, I mean, he's already resigned.
Right.
So Trudeau's resigned. He's done. But there's this other guy who ran the Bank of Canada and then the Bank of England, and he's going to be anointed. And he's called Mark. His name is Mark Carney. But Liz Truss out of England has mentioned that they called him Mark Carnage because of the destruction he created in the UK. So
wow.
that's kind of my,
Well, I love it. Listen, Mark,
take on it. Or
Toronto is wonderful. Canada's, of course, wonderful. It is America's hat, and it is America's largest national park, and everybody loves Canada. Canada's wonderful. You send us all our comedians, and we're very grateful for that, and lots of hockey players, too, and that's wonderful. But, the comedians are number one, I think. And I think Canada produces more comedians per capita than any country in the history of the world, and that's something to be very proud of. But this is actually a topic of discussion. I personally suspect that it's probably not going anywhere, this idea of Canada getting statehood. But if there's discussion in Canada of this happening, and I'm not surprised that your Canadian friends and relatives are shouting you down, what, are you crazy? Become a part of the United States? But you're 100% correct, of course, that the United States has provided safety and security to Canada, certainly since World War II, but you could say even before that, the Russians and buying Alaska from the Russians and creating a buffer between Canada and the Russians, even before the Soviet Union came along. But, I occasionally say, because I think it's fun, and it's also true, that were it not for the United States, first of all, were it not for the United States, the entire planet would be a great big slave orb orbiting the sun in our solar system, because the totalitarians would have taken over everything during or after World War II. But Canada would be the largest wheat field in the Soviet Union if it were not for the United States of America holding the Soviet Union at bay and all of that good stuff. And that's 100% true. And we all love Canadians. You got to make fun of people every now and then, just because it's important to make fun of people every now and then. But everybody loves Canada and Canadians. My best girl and I have been to Toronto together. She has some of her relatives in Canada that we've visited a number of times. We go to Vancouver. We have friends in Vancouver. And, Canada's a wonderful place. It's kind of cold, and that's why most Canadians live very close to the American border, because it's so damn cold up there. What is it, like 90% of the population of Canada can drive a golf ball into the United States from where they are, something like that.
Yes. No, you're not far off.
Yeah, because
yep. No, you are not far off. Yeah, if you look at the border, everybody lives close to the border.
Yep.
And Toronto is bigger, like the greater metropolitan Toronto is bigger than Chicago.
Wow.
So we're not as big as LA or New York, but as a megalopolis, we're bigger than actually Washington D.C. and Virginia and that.
Yeah.
It's like we've grown. It's crazy. Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that you've been here, and so you're knowledgeable and you know a few things, but seems like a lot of Canadians actually don't recognize the fact that the USA is their best brother and sister.
Yeah. We are, and I'm really happy you called in. I got to just tell this real quick, since you mentioned Canada, the Canadian military, and it's true, Canada doesn't have the most gigantic military in the world, but always very good troops and pilots and things, and the Royal Canadian Air Force, the RCAF, wonderful Air Force. And I don't know if you ever, I think I only told this story once on the radio, but my father, whose name was Jules Orteg, a Basque man, grew up in New York, and in 1941, before the United States was in World War II, but Great Britain and therefore Canada already in World War II, my father went with a couple of his buddies up to Canada and joined the Royal Canadian Air Force in order to get into World War II, to go over to Europe, because he always had a tourist's. He always wanted to be a tourist. So got into the Royal Canadian Air Force, and they taught him how to fly fighter planes. And then Pearl Harbor happened, and he was allowed to come back to the U.S. and become a Navy fighter pilot in World War II, having already been trained to fly a plane by the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Well, kindred spirits. My father was in the RCAF and trained, and never saw overseas, but flew out of Hagersville, across the river near Hamilton. So, not too far from Buffalo and Niagara Falls, New York. And,
right.
Yeah. He had people who trained him that died just training him.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's dangerous stuff.
Yeah. Very good. I'm going to keep listening, and I hope some more folks out of us 41 million people now will tune you in, because you're not just a local station in Washington by any means.
Well, you're a good man, Mark. I thank you. I thank you very much. Yeah, we have relatives in St. Catharines. St. Catharines. Since you mentioned Niagara Falls, and we go up there sometimes too. Yeah, Canada's the greatest. The beer is cold. The people are fun and sweet and lovely, and it's true. The Royal Canadian Air Force has always been great. Mark, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. And to statehood for Canada. Yay, statehood for Canada. I think it's good.
Why not?
I think I've got another, stay there, because I got another soundbite or two for you. So keep listening. But let's go to, thank you, Mark. That's great stuff. Everybody loves Canada. Who doesn't love Canada? Come on. We got some polar bears, got some Aleut throat singers. We love the Aleut throat singers. We love that stuff. Yesterday, this came up on on NBC, Meet the Press, not on Face the Meat, but on Meet the Press, on NBC Fake News with their fake journalist, Kristen Welker. And they were interviewing Donald Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, who is a former member of the House of Representatives and a Green Beret and a good guy. National security advisor Mike Waltz on CBS Face the Nation yesterday.
Justin Trudeau warned that President Trump is serious about annexing Canada to make it the 51st state. Is he right? Is President Trump serious about planning to annex Canada?
Look, I think the Canadian people many of them would love to join the United States with no tariffs, with lower taxes. And I have all kinds of neighbors down in Florida that are Canadians that are escaping many of the liberal policies and have moved in.
She's cutting him off.
What we're talking about
but yes or no? First of all, I think some Canadians
stepping all over
disagree with you.
Oh, you think some Canadian? Well, sure. It's I'm sorry, I called it CBS again. Face the Nation, but again, it's NBC Meet the Press. And you see her jumping in to cut him off and talk over him. And Colonel, I think he's still a reservist in the United States Army, and romping, stomping, life-taking, mamma-jamma, all that. Oh, I think some people would disagree with you. Well, he didn't say every single Canadian believes. He said there are a lot of people. But never mind that. Fake journalist Kristen Welker and our national security advisor, Mike Waltz.
Just yes or no? Is he planning to annex
part
Canada?
Of his policy. Well, I don't think there's any plans to invade Canada, if that's what you're talking about.
Annex.
But there is a lot of people that like what we have in the United States and do not like the last 10 years of liberal progressive governance in Trudeau.
Is he planning on to annex Canada like Putin annexed Ukraine? She's using the same terminology because she's a little communist who has a 2-digit IQ, who's a brainwashed, glassy-eyed zombie doing the work of the Democrat Party and the left. And what the heck? That's what I've got to say about her. Wah. So Mike Waltz saying, there are a lot of people in Canada. Are you planning on annexing Canada? He's like, we're not using the military to invade Canada, you dimwit. But that's our media. If we could get rid of them, replace them, get an honest press corps like they have in Iran or North Korea, someplace like that. Just extraordinary. Womp, womp, womp. What a world it is. The Democrat Party. But, in Canada, you got guys like Mark, regular guys say, join the United States. Yeah. Could be some benefits to that. That's true. Statehood now. Statehood for Canada. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Bomb. All right. Yes, sir. Good stuff. We're next door to Montgomery County here. Montgomery County was named after Richard Montgomery, an Irish-born soldier in the Continental Army. He also invaded Quebec in 1775 and tried to take it over. It's full of French people, though, so he came back home and said, I think I'll stay here. Very silly people. Let's go to Jacob, calling from the great state of Indiana. Jacob, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Good morning, Chris. Great to talk to you. So on this Canadian issue, just wanted to share a story. For probably 5 or 6 years running, I would head up from Chicago to Toronto to attend a national real estate conference. And what struck me the very first year I went, what struck me was the first hour of the opening session was dedicated to discussing the U.S. economy, everything from rates to growth. And then only after that was fully digested did they break into the Canadian economy. And it hit me right then and there just how important the United States is from an economic perspective to Canada. The fact that they would dedicate this opening session, major banks from Canadian, all of their major economic advisors get up and after another talk about what's going on in the U.S. and how it would impact Canada. It wasn't the inverse. It was always the U.S. drives Canadian exports, imports, and frankly, economic viability.
Right. Well, we're the giant dog to the south, and Canada is obviously a great, wonderful country, and everybody does love Canadians, and they do have more comedians and all that stuff, and it's the longest unprotected border on the face of the earth and has been for a long, long time. And they're great, great neighbors, and we're pretty darn good neighbors, too.
Right.
And our economy is the biggest in the world, and theirs never has been. And you got a population now about the size of the population of California, right?
Right.
But
if I could,
sure, please go ahead.
If I could share one more thing, it was so interesting because I loved going up there. I was fortunate enough to travel from coast to coast and see all the major cities. What struck me is they knew everything about us. They knew the states, the capitals of the states, baseball teams. They spent an awful lot of time in Florida and Arizona, depending on from what province you reside in.
Right.
But when I came back to Chicago and I talked to my peers here, it was amazing how little we know of them. It was somewhat dismissive, and maybe it's just a bit of arrogance on our part, but it was just another eye opener for me how little we know about our neighbors to the north, and yet they know and frankly care so much about us.
Yeah, I've found that to be true too, and that's a very good point. We like Canada. Let's give them statehood. Hey, we're back. Hey, this big scoop out of the New York Times today. The Fox Corporation, Fox, Big Daddy Fox, which owns Fox News and Fox Movies and lots of Fox stuff, Fox Television Entertainment Networks. Listen to this. According to the New York Times, Fox Corp has bought an outfit called Red Seat Ventures. Red Seat Ventures is the digital media firm that has partnered with Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson, who both left Fox News to go off and become independent, and have both been spectacularly successful since they left the Fox News organization. The Red Seat Ventures also works with and I guess distributes Nancy Grace and Piers Morgan and others who went off to create independent online programming. And now The organization that they've been working with, Red Seat Ventures, has been bought by Fox. Wow. Just when I thought I was out, they sucked me back in again. Isn't that amazing? That's because they're Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. Piers Morgan I could care less about for the most part. He's English. But that's an interesting development, I've got to say. So Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Piers Morgan work for Fox again? What? They went off to become independent. So it looks like what kind of an agreement do they have? I have no idea what kind of an agreement they might have with Red Seat Ventures, but they might want to be taking a look at that now because it's different all of a sudden. Fox acquires firm behind the Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly shows. That's just nuts. How can that be? All being gobbled up. And this true crime stuff, they do that too. I'm going to have to wait and hear more about that. Also, when I was talking about the General Richard Montgomery, and I said, and he went up to Quebec, and he discovered it was full of French people, so he came back home. Not quite right. He went up there. He went up to Quebec. He did invade Quebec in 1775 as part of, the American thing, and he was killed. He was killed there in Quebec, fighting for the Continental Army in 1775 in Quebec. And Richard Montgomery of Montgomery County, the namesake of Montgomery County, Maryland. Not as interesting as what's happening to Tucker Carlson next, I've got to say. But what a planet it is we have here. Am I right? Yes, I am. There was an interesting ad last night in the Super Bowl where the TV commercial recruiting people for the United States Secret Service. Isn't that weird? And it was a 60-second TV ad that they paid how many millions of dollars for to try to recruit people. And it's interesting because it turns out, we talked about this on Friday and I think on Thursday also, but U.S. Army recruiting numbers have skyrocketed since Donald Trump was elected, and then since Inauguration Day, skyrocketed like nobody's business. But kind of an interesting TV ad last night in the Super Bowl, and it was developed or produced by Michael Bay. Michael Bay, who is a huge Hollywood motion picture director, and it's a recruiting advertisement for the Secret Service.
America was founded on an idea of freedom. America's always stepped forward in time of need throughout our short but powerful history.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you
Little John Kennedy.
Tear down this wall.
He got shot and killed. Reagan was shot.
There for all of it.
The second plane hit the tower.
Our heroes are humble. They have an inner pride to keep this idea alive.
Lots of action.
Protectors are born, they're not made.
Big, strong men with guns.
America's Secret Service protecting this Super Bowl is asking a few more to step forward.
Now, there's kind of a weird element to all of this. The ad includes images of Abraham Lincoln, who was president of the United States, who was shot and killed, assassinated at the Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. by a Democrat who loved slavery as they all did. And you heard they've got John F. Kennedy, who was, of course, shot and killed while under the protection of the Secret Service. And they've got Ronald Reagan, who was shot and wounded while under the protection of the Secret Service. And then, there's Donald Trump, who was shot and winged, shot and wounded, blood drawn by a sniper's rifle bullet. I think that's maybe a little bit peculiar. And this Michael Bay guy who makes like Transformers movies, and he's made tons and tons of big movies, is a big-time Hollywood director, no doubt about it. And it's a big deal getting him to make your multi-million-dollar ad and then to spend millions of dollars showing it during the Super Bowl, too. How about that? That's kind of, that's something, I got to say. Wacky. So that was the big, and again, there were reports that Elon Musk had bought ads in the Super Bowl, and we were going to see really cool Elon Musk ads about downsizing government and things. And I didn't see those ads. If those appeared, they got by me. I didn't notice them. So now let's go to, I know we played soundbite number 5, right? And there is, I think you played number 6 too, didn't you? Played number 6. Then after the game was over, the big Super Bowl, the football game, Philadelphia was victorious, and boy, were they victorious. I mean, they mopped the floor with Kansas City. They really did. It wasn't even a competition, or not much of a competition. But what happened in Philadelphia afterward? Well, you know, a lot of violence and vandalism and property damage because Philadelphia Eagles fans were out in the streets tearing the place up. We won! They're tearing down street lights, carrying them around on their shoulders, crashing through things, smashing stuff. If this keeps up, Philadelphia fans might get a reputation. It was very violent. Would you call it an insurrection? Was it a riot? I think there are a lot of Democrats in Philadelphia. Blow the whistle. I just heard somebody say blow the whistle. I think, now, is that like a troublemaker? You got a troublemaker, give him a whistle? Or was that Philadelphia Eagles fans riot during Super Bowl disorder? The Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom. Chaos in Philadelphia as Eagles celebrate. Eagles celebrations descend into riots and violence. The U.S. Sun. Carnage on the streets as Philadelphia Eagles fans celebrate Super Bowl win by setting fires, climbing cop cars, and brawling. Honestly, but now I think we know that Eagles fans are the Palestinians of the NFL. They're like the Hamas. You know what Hamas is to the Middle East, Philadelphia fans are to NFL football. Well-known traits and characteristics of Eagles fans. That's why for so long they had a jail in their stadium in Philadelphia, because Eagles fans caused carnage on the streets of Philadelphia as they celebrated their superpower win by setting fires, climbing on cop cars, and brawling. Revelers set off fireworks and took over the center of the city after their team dominated the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22 in New Orleans at the Salad Bowl on Sunday night. So riots, fires, Molotov cocktails, burning stuff. Some pretty good fireworks, too. Pretty serious fireworks going on there as well. And the mayhem. I've got to say, I've got to give Brian Doherty credit for the... my friend Brian and I were texting back and forth this morning, and we were trading videos of the riots in Philadelphia. And he said, these guys are the Palestinians of the NFL. And I laughed out loud at my couch on my couch at home this morning. As and I told him I'm going to steal that from him. I'm going to steal that. I'll steal it, but I'll give him credit for it because Brian said that this morning, and it made me laugh out loud. Pretty funny stuff. Cops estimated some 10,000 Eagles fans were out on Broad Street and surrounding areas following the Super Bowl 59 win. They just use 5-9 instead of LIX. I prefer LIX. Super Bowl licks. Their win was some climbing light poles, trees, and sanitation trucks. You know, they greased the poles. This is any young guy that can climb the poles. They greased the poles because they know if the Eagles win, even if they don't know how to spell Eagles, that it could lead to violence. City Hall was lit up with green lights as the crowd gathered in front of it, chanting for their team. The crowd at 12th and Market Streets ransacked a truck full of white towels outside a hotel and then set fire to them. Some fans lit a Chiefs jersey on fire and shouted, "Beep, Taylor Swift! Beep, Taylor Swift!" You can probably write your own curse word in there. One group of fans pulled down a traffic light and then kicked it broken before they lifted it onto a truck. They got to take it home. It's a souvenir. Hey, look, the Eagles won, and I got a street light. Others climbed on top of an ambulance and began dancing. Other fans climbed onto the roof of a police van. Philadelphia's Jello Man, they got the Jello Man, was also seen firing alcoholic shots from a slingshot into the crowd. Well, you know, it's a celebration after all. Bizarre scenes of men in banana suits climbing on top of a bus stop, and a person dressed as Elmo egged on the crowd to, get into a dance-off. You want to have a dance-off, because what else would you want to do? Hey, who brought the fireworks and stuff? Others brawled in the middle of the street. A booze-fueled fans out of control. Cops kept a heavy presence in the area, had to call for backup after their repeated pleas for people to leave went unheeded. Well, of course they went unheeded. Don't be silly. Man, oh, Manischewitz. All right, let's take one more quick phone call. We've got so many things to get to there. Yeah, Philadelphia, isn't that great? President Trump today also talking about imposing new tariffs, in particular on Mexico and Canada, having to do with steel, the metal, and aluminum, or aluminium, as English people say. And that's because he's negotiating with them. He's striking trade deals with them, and he wants our trade imbalance to be corrected. And so he begins with, hey, what if I do this? See what I'm saying? All right, let's grab a quick call. Brian calling from Montgomery County, Maryland. Oh, Brian dropped off the line. Let's go to Andy calling from the great state of North Carolina. Andrew, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, Chris.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah, I was just calling about suggestions for the development of the Gaza Strip.
Uh-huh.
And years ago, I worked on Fort Bragg as an engineer, and I helped build a now world-famous special operations training facility for
excellent
training about anti-terrorism. We built buildings. We even built a hotel, and they were able to use that. And I'm thinking, Gaza looks like Nagasaki 2 weeks after the bombing. And I was thinking before they start the development, they could go in there and invite a lot of anti-terrorist groups over the world and use it as a training facility. Because we also destroyed the old 82nd barracks that were like maybe 50 years old. But before they did that, we used them to train in as shoot houses. and we blew them up for a couple of days, and then they demolished them.
I like your thinking. I like the way you think, Andy, and that's fun stuff. And you're in North Carolina, so you still work around Bragg or live around Bragg?
Yeah, I live there. I still call it Fort Bragg, but
yeah, sure.
Most people do.
Yeah, sure. It's Fort Bragg. Come on.
Yeah.
Crying out loud. Can't just go around changing the name of everything. I like your thinking. I like your, and it would be kind of rebuilding, and we'd bring Western civilization to them, and guns, too, because whenever civilization comes to them and to that part of the world, you better bring some guns and lots of ammo. President Trump talking about tariffs on steel and aluminum, and only on steel and aluminum, from Canada and from Mexico, where we get a lot of steel and a lot of aluminum.
We'll also be announcing steel tariffs on Monday. Any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
What about aluminum, sir?
Aluminum, too.
10%?
No, 25%.
25 for aluminum.
25 for both.
That's huge. It's a gigantic tariff. He's putting the pressure on. He wants them to negotiate over economic issues.
Very simply, it's if they charge us, we charge them. That's all.
When does it go into effect?
Almost immediately. But I'll be announcing the details of it, highly detailed, and it'll be great for everybody, including the other countries. But if they are charging us 130% and we're charging them nothing, it's not going to stay that way.
This is on every country?
Every country will be reciprocal.
Every country will be reciprocal. President Trump has reestablished the United States of America as the preeminent superpower on the planet, politically, economically, militarily. Not that he's a militaristic, but he's, Joe Biden presided over the entry into 2 different wars. Fascinating things going on all over the place, all around us. And I didn't get to a lot of things that I wanted to get to today. Israel hostages being released. They looked like they had escaped from or been liberated from Bergen-Belsen because the savages. And I have that great Israeli ambassador saying we're going to hunt them down and kill them all, which is what you want to hear. Have a great day.